Welcome to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers, for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Yeah.
Right, and that's huge because I feel, so I've trained many trainers over the last 8 years, and you get someone who comes from a different, like a pure positive background who now is ready for something new, right? And as soon as you start introducing pressure, there's always kind of this aversion to pressure in general, even if it's something as light as leash pressure, like a front to heel or something like that. And there's this visceral response based on how much what they think and what they feel they understand, that they don't even want to execute the physicality of it.
Yep.
But once they get over that hump, they go, oh, it's super easy.
Yep.
And that in and of itself is a struggle. That's great. The technical skill.
I take my dogs out, my board and train dogs, when they're good enough. My way of socializing and getting them outside is I take them places where they can be inside. And one of the places I take them, of course, is like Petco, just because they're super dog friendly. Mm-hmm. And I ran into a couple trips ago, but also today, I was there a little while ago. They're one of their trainers. And he was a really nice guy. I mean, obviously he's pure positive because I know Petco only does like all positive training. And I spoke to him a little, and he's very nice, very like personable. And I invited him on, so I figure we'll have him on at some point. But I definitely think that it's important to talk to people from the different training ideologies and kind of get their perspective on things.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's weird to watch the evolution, right? So there are things that I learned when I was naive and young that if somebody ask me to learn to do that now, would I be able to? Right.
Right.
So there's a point, I'm 16 and somebody says, here's how you yank on a leash. Right.
Yeah.
Right?
And you're like, I could do that. Boom. And
you're like, really? I'm supposed to yank on the dog? They're like, absolutely. That's what you do. You got to commit to it. It has to be this way. And not knowing anything else, right? You commit. And you learn a skill. Then as your journey progresses, I learn better ways of doing that. And I learned that maybe I was unfair at various times and a whole bunch of other stuff. But by that time, that skill was in my toolbox.
Yeah.
So although I don't use it as often as I used to by any stretch, it's there. And so now we have a whole generation of reward-based trainers who are very good at certain aspects of training, like much better than I was early in my journey on reward-based training when I was discovering how to work that, right? And so they're exceptionally good at this, but they can't handle a leash.
Right.
And they know enough that they're in their own way to learning it, because in order to learn it, you have to commit to it, right?
Yes.
And you're going to make some mistakes. Like you're along the way. I say it all the time, but like I would love to resurrect certain dogs and apologize to them, right? I learned to do things on you, and you're the one that suffered for my lack of skill and mechanics and my lack of understanding at that point in time, right? But if I hadn't gone through that, would I be able to do that now if that wasn't a journey? It's challenging when you're trying to educate dog trainers. Yeah. Which piece do I give them when, right? And so that they don't get so in their head that they can't commit to learning the new skill because it feels uncomfortable or it doesn't feel right.
Well, one thing I've seen is also, like, I remember when I came up, I had a community of dogs. I worked at a kennel, and then eventually I went from, assistant trainer all the way to training manager. And so I had trainers around me, and I had mentors around me, and I had people I could ask or see. And, shout out to Edward Valle, one of my homies who is in Texas now, and he doesn't even know I have a podcast, but that guy taught me technique, like such clean technique. And I remember being like, I want to do it like that, where everyone else was cranking and yanking and doing all this other stuff that, but yeah, sometimes the support of the community that's around you, the dog training community, it's easier to fall into those good and bad patterns, right? Yep. So you could have a community of, pure positive or very heavy-handed Keeler method trainers. And because that's the community, it's like it's easier for you to commit into that. Yep. Right. And so, like, one cool thing that, you look at like the whole Leerburg crew, or you look at like what Tyler's doing with Consider the Dog, and we're creating communities of dog trainers of different platforms, and how can we learn from each other? And ultimately, this whole, again, I kind of agree with Tyler, the term balanced dog trainer, but the concept of balanced dog training, we need to create more of that, right? It's too polarized, and we just need to kind of create more communities for people to feel safe to explore these ideas and theories and get coached, not judged.
Yeah. And I think honestly, the hardest part about the balanced training is that it looks so different from dog to dog. If you're really doing it, if you really are embracing that ideal, then it's the dog that's in front of you. And one dog is going to be 90% reward based. Like it's going to be 90% reward. Another dog, it's going to be 90% the other way, unfortunately, right? Just because of their temperament and their situation and where you are in their development. And those adjustments are hard for people, right? And he wants kind of a formula for it. Like I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a week of this and then I'm going to do a week of that. I think, unfortunately, you got like pet dog trainers have it harder because a lot of, in a sense, what they're asking dogs to do is typically easier than a working dog trainer would be. Like but what they have is they have arbitrary timelines put on them by economics. Right? So they're constrained by the marketplace. And so that what winds up happening is until we sort of pull the general public along and get them to start understanding better dog training, the fact that it's a process, it takes time. Like,
what you should start when he's small, not when he's
with a dog in a 2-week inboard, right? If you're training well, how much are you going to accomplish, right? You're going to put way too much pressure on that dog to make sure it looks like you accomplished something. Or the dog's going to look like, hey, it looks at you, it seems happy to be around you, and it sits, but like you're barely scratching the surface. And so, unfortunately, some of the timelines and some of the formulas that trainers are asking for, and like, how long should I do this before I do this, and how long should I do this before I do this, are thrust on them by the economics of what market bears. You know, that guy says he'll do it in 4 weeks, so now I have to offer that, otherwise I don't get clients.
You know what's funny is with this kind of latest push, it seems, at least to me, of like advertising based dog training, I see a lot of that, like that 2-week off leash trained, you know, any dog, any age, any stuff like that. And I've actually been pushing the other way and having a pretty good amount of success. So instead of trying to like race these people to the finish, I'll get a lot of phone calls that are like, hey, well, I spoke to so and so and they were saying, for this price in 2 weeks, X, right? For my like 4-month-old Dobie puppy. And I'm like, you know, the reason why I take longer is because you just, number one, I mean, could you theoretically teach the dog these things in that short amount of time? Possibly, but at what cost? I want the dog to not only learn their commands, but I want them to learn to just enjoy training, learn to enjoy working and paying attention and being with you. But also the extra amount of time. I mean, sometimes there's just, or really all the time, there's just no substitute for good old just drills and just get it ingrained into your brain and really give the dog time in order to, like you talked about, even in a dog's training program. I notice this especially when we talk about socializing or when we do balanced training with the dog, where at some point or another you do have to put pressure on the dog. I notice that every dog's trajectory, they're capable of more pressure the further they are in the program. Because, absolutely. And I wanted to say that to kind of speak to your point about just like a human student, dogs, you can try to teach them the lesson early if you'd like, but they're not really going to grasp the value of it until they're ready for it.
Until their fundamentals are down.
Exactly.
Yeah, just like humans. You know, I always look at why I sucked at soccer. I played soccer for many years. But intermittently as a kid, 5 years old, 7 years old, 9 years old. And I didn't pick up that sport that well because I was too busy figuring out how to dribble the damn ball.
I was dope at soccer.
Well, whatever, dude. All right. Well, where were we? Sorry, I got off topic.
Like I talk to students about this all the time and talk to trainers about this all the time. There's this idea that if you're a better trainer, you can do things faster.
Right, right.
What do the best trainers do with their own dogs? They're not
sweet ass time. They take sweet ass time. Yeah,
they take their time. They make sure all the fundamentals are beautiful before they worry about layering that on. Like they're like, do I have an e-collar on my 6-month-old? No, no. I have plenty of other stuff to do. I have lots of groundwork to lay. We have to get there, right? And so, to Mariano's point, that's it, right? So that's the deal. The more you have in there, then when you hit the pressure point, the dogs are like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm ready to absorb this. I have a place to put this information, right? And that kind of thing.
Well, you know what's funny?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the way that I've always thought about it with the dogs is the way that we were talking about our assistants, and they know what to do, it's just shifting from gear to gear is something that even if they know what those gears are, they're reluctant to take that step. Dogs, as they get better, the reason why I think they're more capable of handling larger amounts of pressure, which is exactly why you up everything, right? Distance, duration, distraction later on in the program. That's why I don't take dogs out to Petco until they're like far enough along that I know that they can handle it. But I think the reason that that is because they already have these kind of preset pathways that they can take. Oh, if I'm distracted, I do this. If they tell me do this, even if there's, so there's all these different routes that they can take. They have all these different tools under their belt already so that they can access them more readily. And then me as a trainer, knowing that they know these things, pressure is less of an immediate option because I know that I can choose this tool, as opposed to being kind of like a one-trick pony. Because earlier on in my training career, I was definitely heavy with pressure, really needed to develop my food work. And when I did that, I've noticed, I mean, not only fundamentally speaking, do the dogs look quicker and happier and everything like that, but they just enjoy the process more. And so they're more consistent more of the time. And it's amazing to see that.
And they're more resilient to bad experience, all the rest of that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
You have more in the bank to bounce back from stuff and to handle things. You have coping mechanisms, the whole 9 yards, for sure.
That's awesome.